Okay, welcome everybody to March's webinar. Today we'll be looking at Mozy for servers. Okay, so my own name is Niall Fahy. For those who haven't joined before, I'm responsible for all the technical training within Mozy, both internally and externally for our support teams. So as I said, today we'll be looking at Mozy for servers. This session will consist of about a 10 to 15 minute presentation, a 15-minute demonstration, and then we'll give over the remaining, which will probably be about a half an hour or 30 minutes to Q&A for any questions you have on the topic. Okay. So just a quick overview of today's session. So we're going to look at, first we're going to be looking at backup sets. Okay, so what are backup sets and what they do and how they can help you when you're backing up your servers. Then we're going to look at VSS backup sets. Okay, so the advantages of using VSS backup sets when backing up certain databases and servers and things like that, compared to selecting them in the file system tab, and why it's better to use VSS backup sets. And then we'll be looking at network shares. Okay, so how to add a network share and the requirements for adding a network share and using a network share. Okay. So just some definitions before we begin. So the user types. Okay, so within Mozy we have two user types. You might well be aware. We have a desktop user and we have a server user. They're both designed for different types of OSs. Okay, so different operating systems. Obviously, the desktop user is designed and specifically for those users who are backing up desktop machines, PCs, laptops, and the like. Whereas server users are intended to be used for backing up server operating systems. Now, although you can use a desktop or a server license on a desktop or a server user on a desktop machine, you can't use a desktop user on a server operating system. So for example, if you were to set up yourself as a desktop user and you were to install the Mozy software on your server operating system and you tried to use your desktop user credentials to log in, you wouldn't be able to activate that client because you'd be picked up as a desktop user and you wouldn't be able to activate. Okay, so today we'll be primarily focusing on server users, as they are obviously, as the session is about servers, and also as well to use a network share or to back up a network share, you have to be a server user. Okay, so if you're a desktop user, you don't see the option to add a network share when you're inside in the Mozy client. Okay, so how can backup sets help me? Okay, so we're just going to look at here what backup sets are and why there's an advantage to using them. Okay, so backup sets just define collections of files by file types located in specific directories on the machine. So you can bunch together particular file types and you can set your search location over your entire machine. You will see in the Mozy backup client already that you have some predefined backup sets. Okay, so these are ones we would have created ourselves as the most common kind of things that people would select for backup. You know, things like PowerPoints, Word documents, Excel sheets and spreadsheets, things of those natures that would be the most common especially to business users. We also have backup sets for music and pictures, and although they are on the Mozy Pro client, they're probably more specific in terms of jobs. Like, I mean, for example, in an accountancy firm, there may not be a need to be backing up music or video files, whereas maybe in a marketing firm there might be. Okay, so backup sets just allow you to group together your particular file types in one set. The advantages of selecting a backup set for backup rather than maybe going in and selecting individual files and folders is that if you select, say for example, for me, PowerPoints are probably the most common file that I have on my machine. And in that respect, if I select the PowerPoints backup sets, then no matter where I create a PowerPoint on my machine and save it to whatever directory, it doesn't matter because it will be automatically selected for backup. I won't have to go in and specify that that file needs to be added to the backups because I've selected the PowerPoint backup set. And that PowerPoint backup set searches for the file types associated with PowerPoints across my entire machine and picks them up for backup because I've selected that one backup set. So it's a quick and easy way to grab a load of files together. You can also use backup sets to include and exclude certain file types or groupings. So you can create custom backup sets as well yourself. Obviously we have the default ones there for you, but you can also create include and inclusionary backup sets to maybe select your own customized selection of files, but you can also create an exclusionary rule. Okay, so for example, if maybe you didn't want music at all to be backed up off your machine, or maybe you didn't want particular file types backed up off your machine, but you wanted maybe your entire desktop. Okay, so you can create exclusionary rules, and I'll show you when we go through the walkthrough. When I go through the walkthrough that how to actually create an exclusionary rule, but just to talk you through it at the moment. Okay, so Mozy works off the Windows logic for creating a backup set rule. So basically what a backup set really is just a container. The container actually takes the rules that you create around that container as to what's going to go into the backup set. Okay, so the backup set for all intents and purposes is just a box, and the rules that you specify to that backup set is what's included. Okay, so when you're creating an exclusionary rule, you select the files that you want to actually exclude, you include them in your backup set, and then you actually exclude that particular backup set from backup. Okay, so when we're going through the walkthrough, I'll show you that and how to do that step by step to create an exclusionary rule. Okay, set and forget, that again goes back to what I mentioned a while ago, whereby you can select a backup set, and if it's searching for particular file types that you may want to back up on a regular basis, and you're creating files of the type on a regular basis, then by selecting the backup set, okay, and having the backup set search maybe the entire directory, then any file you create, say for example we'll say .doc. If I created a .doc and save it on any location on my machine, then the backup set would pick that up when I save it, and then it would add it to my backup sets and it would add it to my backup. I wouldn't have to remember that, oh, I've created a new .doc today, I need to go and add that to my backups. Okay, so Mozy will automatically pick it up for you if you have the backup set selected. Okay, so that is advantage. That's one of the advantages of backup sets compared to the file system tab, where you're actually selecting individual files and folders. Okay. DSS backup sets. Okay, so as I mentioned a while ago, VSS backup sets are great if you're backing up databases or servers, specifically Exchange, Active Directory, SQL, and the like. If you are backing up any of these types of databases or servers, I would strongly recommend you using the VSS backup sets. Okay, so VSS backup sets, why would we say to use them as opposed to maybe just selecting the entire Exchange drive selecting the entire Exchange drive, or maybe the entire Active Directory database from my file system tab? Okay, there's a few reasons, but one of the main reasons is that the file system tab uses the system writer to back up open files. So for those of us who are not familiar with VSS, okay, it's a volume shadow copy service. It's a Microsoft service that allows you to back up open files. So it allows you to use a file, it stays open, but we can still back it up. So for example, if I am like on my machine today, while I have this PowerPoint opened up, I could have a backup running in the background and it would still back up this PowerPoint even though it's opened, but because it's using VSS to do that. Similarly with Exchange and Active Directory and SQL, these are databases and servers that we can't close on a regular basis. So it's something we can't close very easily. You know, If we were to close our Exchange server, then email goes down for the entire organization until it's rebooted. So that's not ideal. So in order to back that up on an ongoing basis, we use this VSS service. Okay, so it is a Microsoft service, and we take the snapshot that's created by VSS and back that up. And this allows us then to restore your Exchange or your Active Directory or SQL Server to you when it's needed. So to highlight why you should be using the VSS Backup Sets as opposed to just selecting the database itself from the Files and Folders tab. Okay, let's look at Exchange database as our example. Okay, so for those who are not familiar with it, how Exchange works in a nutshell is that it creates a file called e00.log. Okay, and this log is generally a temporary log file. Okay, it might come up in your Exchange database as e00.log or e00temp.log. Okay, and basically what happens is every email transaction that occurs is marked inside in this file. Because of that, then the file grows larger and larger until it reaches its maximum size. Once it reaches its maximum size, generally it's about 1 megabyte. Other common values may be 5 megabytes in size that this temporary log file is allowed to get to. Okay, so once it reaches its max size, okay, the file is renamed to a new log file. Okay, so generally it goes to the next available number. So if your Exchange is being used, the Exchange server is being used for the first time, it will go to maybe e01.log. Okay, and then the cycle starts over again. The temporary log file gets blanked, and it starts recording the transactions again and again and again until it again reaches its maximum size. Okay, once it reaches maximum size, it spills over and creates a new permanent log file, e02.log, and the process continues. Okay, because it is constant changing, it can be confusing to a writer that isn't designed to handle the information that's being processed. So, for example, if you're using the File System tab, okay, the File System tab has its own writer. It's the system writer. Okay, it's designed to maybe create snapshots for your individual file, maybe your PowerPoint file or your Word file that you might have opened, small files like that. It's not intended for large files where there's multiple changes, like an Exchange database. Okay, that's why Exchange uses its own writer, which is the Exchange writer. Okay, it's used to back up the database, and it's designed to handle the chaos within the folder. So it's designed to deal with all those massive transactions occurring at a rapid pace and rolling over. So like every transaction inside an Exchange log file is every email sent, created, deleted, moved to a folder. All these small changes we make are recorded in a transaction log file. And it's these log files that we use when we're rebuilding an Exchange database to restore it to its working order. Okay, so if you're trying, because that's a specific writer, an Exchange writer that's used to take a snapshot of the Exchange writer, if you're using the File System tab, okay, again, as I said a while ago, it's using the system writer. The system writer is not designed to take a massive snapshot of a big database. It's designed to take one file at a time. Okay, so if you're trying to back up Exchange using the File System tab, it'll attempt to copy all the files in the Exchange directory. Okay, so every single one of those log files. So those log files don't get purged until a backup has occurred. So if you say, for example, your Exchange server is backed up once a day, say, you could have hundreds of transaction log files depending on how busy your organization was that day. Okay, so you could have hundreds of these individual log files, and each one of them has to be backed up using the File System tab. Okay, and if those files are opened and they're being created as it goes, sometimes the system writer just can't cope with the speed that the transactions are occurring. So basically, the system writer is trying to take a snapshot of a temporary log file, and as it's taking the snapshot, the temporary log file has filled up, it's spilled over and created a new log file, and it's blank again. And the system writer is kind of looking at it and saying basically, hey, what's going on here? This file was full a second ago, and now it's empty. Because the transactions happen at such a rapid pace, it can't keep up with it. Okay. Generally, if you use the file system tab to back up these, if you use the file system tab to back up the Exchange databases, you generally start seeing things like file system error 2s the odd time, and maybe within the error message you might receive within the log file, you might see that the E00 log or the E00 temp log file is the one that's failing backup. And that's generally down to the fact that the system writer just can't keep up with the changes. Okay? And that's where VSS backup sets come in. Okay? If you use a VSS backup set, okay, you will see them in your, if you open up your Mozy settings now and you look in your backup sets, if you have Exchange or Active Directory or SQL installed on your machine, okay, or on your server, you will see a VSS backup set for Exchange, for Active Directory, and for SQL. They stand out because they have a parenthesis, VSS, parenthesis, and then Exchange. So these are picked up when Mozy does the scan of your system when it's installed. It picks up that you have these Exchange writers and you have this Active Directory writer, and it creates these backup sets because it knows it has those databases and servers have their own specific VSS writer. So these are actually created by the system themselves, and we just pick up that these backup sets are there. Okay. So using the VSS backup set, it backs up then for Exchange, for example, it just backs up the transaction databases that are relevant. Okay, instead of backing up each individual log file, it backs up the transaction databases, and it takes a snapshot of those and backs those up, so that when we're restoring to you, we can restore these databases. And when you're doing the restore process, if you, God forbid, should have to, then you can just use the VSS restore. That brings me to another advantage of using VSS, and it's the restore process. So generally, you know, it's all well and good me talking about here about, you know, it's better for your backups, they run more smoothly, and that. But I suppose from your point of view, you want to know, how does it benefit me when I'm restoring? Okay. The advantage of using VSS backup sets when backing up Exchange and Active Directory and SQL is that all these systems have the ability to restore using VSS backup sets. Okay, so your Exchange database, for example, if your Exchange database, God forbid, should go down, and you would have to restore your Exchange database from us, we would give you back the VSS backup set restore. So we give you back the VSS restore if you've used the VSS backup sets. You open up Exchange and you have the option to restore using VSS. You can then just import that file that we've returned back to you, and it restores your Exchange database in a lot more, because there's a VSS wizard within the Exchange database. It allows you to use those VSS backup sets that you've backed up. Okay, so once that once you restore that, you're going through the restore process, you will see that there's actually a VSS option within the Exchange database to restore, basically. Okay, if you were to use the file system tab and back up all those individual transaction log files, then you'd have to restore every single one of those transaction log files and restore them one by one in order to restore your Exchange data, your Exchange server, which is a long process. Okay. So again, I'll show you in a second when I'm moving on to the when I move on to the walkthrough in a second. I'll show you where you can select VSS backup sets from. Okay, so just on network shares now, just to move along. Okay, so Mozy will work when communicating with a properly configured Samba share over TCP or an IP. Okay, and using standard authentication methods. So there's three options, or there's three components to adding a network share. Okay. The location, which is the path, the username and password. Okay, So Mozy requires that the unique naming convention be precisely adhered to when defining a network share. Okay, so you just need to ensure that you're using the correct location, username, and password in the correct order, and this is what it should look like. Okay, so your path must be following. You must use the following convention: either // server name /share or / IP address /share. Okay, so if you put in your server name, it needs to be your server name first /share, and then or your IP address /share. Okay. Okay, so Samba Authentication usually requires that your username be preceded with either your domain, your host name, or your IP address, followed by your username. Okay, as you can see there. If you don't include this, it will automatically chop the name of the machine the request is originating from to the username. So, for example, if I'm on box A and my name is Bob, and I'm trying to authenticate to box B, and I only put in my username in the field, it's going to send the authentication stream box A /Bob to box B. But box B won't know what box A is, so it will just turn down the authentication request because it's not a valid naming convention. Okay, so you do need to ensure that your username does follow the required format, and it's generally a domain /username, host name /username, or IP address /username. Okay, so that's just for yourself. And in general, kind of rule of thumb, if you can't add your network share to your actual machine, you're not going to be able to add it either within Mozy. You need to be able to add it first to your machine. If you can't add it there, chances are you won't be able to add it when you open up the Mozy settings window. Okay. So that's just network shares, and I'll show you how to add a network share now in the walkthrough. So I'm just moving over here now from my slide deck to. So first we're going to look at backup sets and an exclusionary rule. We'll then look at adding a network share. Okay, and I'll also show you the DSS backup sets as well. Okay. So I'm just going to jump out here, and I'm going to open up my settings window. Okay, so in my backup sets here, okay, you can see some of the default backup sets that I have here created. Okay, so as you can see, these are the default backup sets that Mozy has installed themselves. Okay, so these are, as I said, well ago, the most common ones that we tend to see for people. As I said, for myself, it's presentations. Okay, but if you want to, you can create your own backup sets as well. Okay, so to create your own backup set, you just right-click in the space and add a backup set. Okay, you get a pop-up window like this. Okay, you're asked to name the backup set, and then select the search location. Okay, so for me, I'm going to select my entire C drive. Then comes the position where you add a rule. So as I said a while ago, the backup set itself is just a box or a container. The rules are what defines what's going to go into the box or the container. You can add a rule. Okay, so you have the option there to include, and you can do it by file type, by size of file, the last modified date, the created date, the file name, the folder name. So if I do file, so I'm going to do a couple of rules here just to show you each option. Okay. Change that one to last modified, created, and folder name. Okay, so some of these have additional options. So include size, is less than, is greater than. Include last modified, before, after, between. It's the same for created. And include file name, is not. As you can see from the drop down there, there's doesn't contain or contains, and it's the same there again for the folder name, and you can select files or folders. Okay, so these rules will stipulate what goes into the actual backup set. Okay, so for example, if I wanted to back up all music.mp3 files on my machine that were created before, let's say 2 months ago. So what I would do here is select my search location, include file type .mp3. Okay, add another one. Okay, and created before let's say the 1st to the 3rd. So, or for anybody else, it's the 1st of March, okay? And hit OK. It scans the file set and will populate that backup set then with the files that are relevant. Okay, so there you have it. There's 42 files. And as you can see up here, for my music, there's actually 1.6 gigabytes on the machine. Okay, whereas this is only selected the 42 that are relevant to the rules that I've created for that backup set. Okay. Again, if I want to make changes to any of these, I can edit by right-clicking. I can edit or remove the backup set. Okay. So to do an exclusionary rule, okay, you first need to go to Options and select the option Show Advanced Backup Set Features. Tick that. Come back to Backup Sets. Okay. Edit Backup Set. And it has created this additional checkbox here. Files matching this set will be excluded from the final backup. Okay. So I tick this option, hit OK, and now you can see that this backup set has gone red, highlighting to me that it's excluded, that any of the files within this backup set will not be backed up. As you can see in the right hand window, all these files are now locked and I can't select them. If I go up to Music, scroll down, and there's those files that have been excluded. And even in there I can't select them. So it's not that I'm creating an exclusionary rule and I can, go a roundabout way to back up those files maybe from a different location. It actually shows, even in the music one, that I can actually select these files for backup. Okay. So some of you might have seen before, if you've come in here, that you also have the option here, the option to include and exclude. Okay. When you're actually creating a true exclusionary rule, so if you do want to, for example, if you wanted to exclude just MP3 files from your backups, or maybe you wanted to exclude other maybe video files or something like that, the easiest one to do if you wanted to exclude all music would be just edit the music backup set, okay, and just select exclude. Tick that option and it'll exclude them all. Same with photos and images, you could just edit that backup set and do the same. If you were creating your own custom backup set, okay, of particular files that you don't want to be backed up, match the rules to it, okay, and again, include, the rule you would create would be an inclusionary rule, but then you'd select this checkbox up here, okay. Again, this goes back to the fact that the backup set itself is just a container. It's just a box. So what I'm saying here is that I want to exclude my MP3 files. And again, this is why this follows computer logic rather than the way we would actually logically think about things. Okay, so what's happening here is that I've created my box and I'm saying include MP3 files in it. So I'm putting my MP3 files into my box. And then I'm ticking the option to say, no, I don't want this. So I'm ticking this checkbox up here and saying, this box now I want to exclude it from the backup. Okay? Whereas if I was to come in here and select exclude MP3s, okay, what I'm saying is that I'm creating a box, I'm putting all my files into it, and I'm excluding MP3s from that box. And that's not a true exclusionary rule. Okay, it's okay if you do want to back up absolutely everything else on your machine except MP3 files, then that could work. But generally, we're talking about excluding specific files and folders now and again, rather than an entire grouping of files. Okay, so just to move on, the VSS backup sets, okay, because this is a desktop machine, it's my laptop, I don't have an Exchange server or any of that, but you will see VSS backup sets here. Okay, so this is what a VSS backup set looks like. It has this parentheses, VSS, parentheses, okay? So this is picked up on installation. This is not a Mozy created backup set or anything like that. The system is scanned on installation and it will pick up if there's VSS backup sets there, okay? Most often, nearly all desktop machines and laptops will have this COM Plus registration VSS backup set, okay? As you can see, like that, it just has in here, it just has the files like this, okay? And you can back up those files if you wish, okay? Simple like that, you select like that, and it'll select those files and run the backup. For Exchange and SQL Server and so on, you will have in here, you will have an individual VSS Exchange backup set, a VSS SQL backup set, and you just select those for backup. Okay. To add a network share, okay, again into your File System tab, and you'll have this little option here, this button here to add a network share. Okay. Input your share path. If you already have a network share connected to your machine and you've already mapped the path, it'll come up in the drop down here. Okay. If you have a username or password required for that network share, and you create it, hit OK, and I'll add the network share to your computer list underneath here. It will just come up as if it's an additional drive. Okay. The only thing to note on network shares is that we can't back up open files on a network share. Okay, so if you have open files in a network share, you won't be able to back them up, unfortunately. Okay, so that's just network shares. It's straightforward enough. You're in here at your File System tab, and you just click on that. Okay, select if you already have your share mapped, you can drop down the menu. If not, you put in your UNC path to your network share. And again, if you have a username and password, you input it there and just add it. Okay. Okay, so that is all on the walkthrough. I want to give as much time as I can to questions and answers on this topic. Okay. So I'll leave it open now to any questions that people have. I just thank you for your patience and your time today in joining our webinar. Again, as I say, I'll leave it open now to any questions that people may have in relation to the topic. If you want me to go back over anything, or you maybe want me to clarify anything, please just let me know. And just so you know, I will be sending out a recording of the session once we're finished. And for those who are attending, and so for some people who may have had to leave early or who may not have seen the entire session, I'll also be sending out the notes in that same email with the recorded session on today's webinar. Okay, so if there's any questions, I'll leave it open to people. Okay, Michael, I just received your question there. Just give me 2 seconds. I'm using version 2.24. I noticed on your presentation at the bottom of the backup set screen you have a graphic that shows the usage. I do not have that. Okay. Okay, Michael, that's just on this one here, and I think this is for Vanessa as well. Yeah, Mozy Next is the same as Mozy Pro. It's just a branded partner that we'd have internally. So the only difference between Mozy Next and Mozy Pro is that we would test run internally. We would test run some of our upcoming features in Mozy Next just before we launched in Mozy Pro. But it's the exact same client. On my backup sets tab, Michael, in relation to your question, yeah, the usage tab down here is dependent on on whether you're using pool storage or not. Okay, so it just might be that your organization is not yet using pool storage, and that's why you're not getting the usage tab like the one I have here. If you're not getting it at all, you should be getting some sort of a usage tab though. Maybe if it's not similar to this one here, but you should be getting some sort of one. If not, maybe if you could send me, Michael, a screenshot of what you're seeing on your own client, and maybe with your company name, and I can have a look into it myself. And if it's something that we need to do further work on, I can get somebody in support to have a look at it for you. Okay, so I hope that answers your question, Michael and Vanessa. Okay, Samuel, can we add a backup set on our online portal so it will populate an offer? Yes, Samuel, you can create backup sets online. So if you just give me 2 seconds, I'll just show you here how to do it. So log into your partner. So once you log in online, just give me 2 seconds there now. Just open up my account there now. Okay, so Sam, just while my account is just opening up there, I'm just going to take the next question. Is there VSS selection for Microsoft Server recovery? Is the Microsoft Server recovery is this can you give me some more detail on what the Microsoft Server recovery is? Is this just a backup that you're creating of a Microsoft server, and then you're just backing up that Microsoft server, or is it that it's a database? Okay, Edward, I've seen your question there, and I'll just answer it there, and just give me 2 seconds. I just want to respond to these other questions first, and I'll get to your own. Okay. That's recovery from original installation media. Okay, so I'm not sure for that software if there is for a Microsoft Server recovery. I can't say for 100%, but if you can send me on the additional information on it directly to my email, you would have gotten my email from the invitation. So it's niallf@mozy.com. If you can send me on additional information on the was it Microsoft Server recovery, then I can get somebody to have a look at it and get a proper answer for you. I myself can't say for definite if there should be a DSS backup set for it. Because again, these are not, we don't create these backup sets, they're just picked up when we actually scan the file system initially. Apologies for that. Samuel, I haven't forgot your question. I'm just trying to log into my account. Trying to remember my training account that I have online. So just bear with me. Okay, Sam, I actually can't get access to my account at the moment. My internet connection is pretty slow from hosting the webinar. So what I'll do is that I will create a step-by-step process and put it into a document for you, and I will email it on to everybody so they can see how I've carried out those steps to actually create a backup set in a client configuration online. Okay, Samuel. Apologies for that. Okay, Edward, just getting your question there now. Restoring my server from scratch, would I use the DSS restore to restore? Okay, so apologies, Edward, I'm just reading through your question here now. Just give me 2 seconds. So you're, just for everybody else, Edward's question is restoring your server from scratch. Would I use VSS Restore to restore all my Active Directory information, such as user accounts, user rights, and users? If you do this, how are user rights restored when I restore a server from scratch? It's just that they're testing their disaster recovery procedures. Okay, so they want to know, do they basically stand up a new server installation of the OS and do a full server restore using Mozy, and just wants to know, can we do this? Okay, so just give me 2 seconds there now. Okay, so I know I have, Edward, there is a support knowledge base article on this. I'm just trying to find it from there, support.mozy.com. Okay, so I'm just sending you a support article there from our knowledge base, Edward. So if you can have a look at that and let me know if that answers your question. If not, then I'll get some more information for you. Okay, Pavel, apologies for the delay. I'm just getting back to your question now, so just read your question there. Okay, Pavel, so the software you're backing up is creating a backup file every day, which is usually around 4 to 5 gigs. It gets purged every other day and is substituted with a newly created backup file. So that's a lot more storage to what I actually need. So so the backup file has been created, okay? Does that change name every day? So today, if it creates the file and it's 5 gigs, and let's say, for example, it's called test, and then tomorrow, does that backup file is created again, is that again called test, or is it given a new name every time the backup file is created? Because if it's the same name, it shouldn't be taking up any more storage, if you get what I mean. Pavel. So maybe if you could, again, what I would ask, because this is a specific issue, what I would ask you to do, Pavel, is maybe if you can give me all the detail you have on what's happening. So, you know, what the software is you're actually backing up. And as I said there, is the file that it's creating every day, is it the same name or is it a different name? Okay. And then if you email me directly, what I can do is I can have a read through it properly, speak with some of our support guys and get you a good proper answer on that. And if not, if I can't answer it, then I can get, what I can do is I can actually get one of the support guys to actually reach out to you and create a case for you and have a look into this issue. Because if it's the same name every day, then it shouldn't be. It should just be backing it up as if the file was just changed. So it should not be, you know, using multiple storage. So it should be this, for example, your storage shouldn't be going up by 5 gigabytes every day. Michael, so Michael's question, so sorry, just Pavel, if you could send that information on to me if that's okay. Thanks very much. So Michael's question, does Mozy back up multiple versions of a single file, or is it only the most recent version that we can access? No, so as a Mozy Pro customer, you have 60 days versioning. What does that mean? That means that if you back up a file today, that version of the file is available for you for the next 60 days. After 61 days, we then remove that version of the file, and tomorrow's version becomes the latest, or the end of the 60 days. So from today, if you back up files today, we would keep those versions of files for 60 days. Okay. You can just change the date when you go to create a restore. If you change the date, you can actually go back and select that particular date's version. So for example, if you have a file, let's say, let's put me as an example again, a PowerPoint, maybe I'm working on a PowerPoint for the last week, I'm doing a presentation next week, okay? And each day my PowerPoint changes, so each backup, the PowerPoint file itself is different. And I start working on it on Monday. By Thursday, I realized that my last 2 days' work was crap. It wasn't good enough, and I want to start from 2 days ago. What I can do is I can go to the restore window, select Tuesday's version of the file, and restore that version of the file. You don't always have to restore the most recent version. Okay, you can select the date, and it will allow you to go back and pick which version of the file you want. Okay, so I hope that answers your question, Michael. Okay, yes, okay. Okay, Pavel, that's the problem. Okay, so the file itself, so the backup file itself is changing name. Okay. What I do is, Pavel, I'm going to email you directly offline to get you some more information off you, and I might have one of the support guys reach out to you to have a look into this issue for you, if that's okay. So yeah, if it is changing name, I can see now why it would be going up every day by 5 gigs. Okay, Michael, what about restoring a file that was inadvertently deleted from the server? Yeah, again, so if for example, today I deselect a file from my server, I don't mean to do it as you say there, inadvertently deselect a file. That file stays on our backend on our servers for another 60 days before we actually remove it, just in case, like that situation where you accidentally deselect it and you don't realize it for a couple of days. So rather than removing it entirely straight away, because you mightn't have intended to do it, we'll keep it for 60 days. The thing about it is that you don't get charged for that storage. So for example, if we have a kind of a general rule of thumb that if, for example, you're backing up 10 gigabytes, we probably have about 30 gigabytes on the back end being used from different versions of the files that you might have, or files that you might have accidentally deselected, and we'll hold on to them for 60 days and then remove them, just in case that you realize, okay, I actually didn't mean to deselect that, and you select again for backup, that you don't have to back it up in full again. So yeah, so if you inadvertently delete something from the server, it's still, from its last backup, it'll be on our servers for 60 days afterwards. Okay, no problem, Michael. Okay, can we separate schedule? Unfortunately, so the question, Tony's question here is, can we set a separate schedule for different backup sets? For example, database set hourly and non-critical files once a day. Unfortunately, we actually can't set scheduled time for backup sets. It is actually something that I think it is a good idea, where you could so the example you've given here is that you could select your critical database files for backup on an hourly basis, but your non-critical files once a day, like maybe your PowerPoints or your Word documents. Unfortunately, we can't do that at this moment. We don't have that option. I'm not sure. I don't think it's something that's been put in for any of the roadmaps I've seen for the near future. But definitely, we do have on our support.mozy.com, there is a section there for suggestions, and these go directly. So these go directly to our developers, who pick out some of the top suggestions every once in a while. So I would recommend you getting on to support.mozy.com, going in there and maybe entering that one as a possible, I suppose, maybe a custom rule or kind of an update. But thanks for that one, Tony. Okay, Edward and Elena both have questions here, so I'm just going to take Edward's one is just coming first, so I'll just take that. I had to restore a new version of Mozy Pro software and had to reselect my volumes to back up. Does Mozy refill backup because this is a new instance of the software? Okay, so Edward, if it's the same machine, and it's the same files and they're still the same locations, then the hashes of those files shouldn't have changed. Even if you had put in a new version of the Mozy software, it should still pick up that the files are already there, and it should just, what it'll do is it'll check them off and say, okay, this file is here, it hasn't changed since the last backup, so it'll just mark it again on our servers to say, okay, this file is included in backup, and then any files that are maybe particularly small. Generally, really small files tend to back up every single backup. Maybe small text files under a couple of megs, they would generally back up every backup. But your larger volumes and stuff like that, your larger files, they should be seen as long as it's the same machine. It shouldn't be an issue. They should just reassociate themselves with the files that are already on our servers. Okay, Elena. Your question was the best way. Okay, Elena, if you wanted to do the best way, I suppose would maybe just to select a couple of random files, go to your online web restore and select a couple of random files and create a restore. If it's just a couple of files that you want, that's probably the best way. If it's an entire database or an Exchange server or something like that, it would probably take a bit more time. And it would probably be something that you probably have to maybe actually schedule and to test. But if it's just a couple of files you want to check to make sure that everything is okay, then maybe go online select a couple of files, or even from the in-client. So from inside the client, you can create a restore too. Okay, so from inside the client, you can create a restore from here as well. Select a couple of files and restore them. Probably the fastest way. Other than that, going online to your online web restore window and maybe creating a couple of restores. Okay, so does that, Elena, does that answer your question? Okay, no problem. Thanks very much for your time. If there's any more questions, we're coming up near the end of the session. For anybody who's wanted to take, we've had to take one of their questions offline, then we can do that. Michael, yeah, I can do it really quick. So just give me 2 seconds there now. So Michael just asked me, can you look at the access files online feature? Okay, so okay, so it should be 2 seconds there now. Just going to access my account. Sorry, just open up my account there now, sorry. I might have too many accounts. Apologies for the delay. Now, as I say, we're having some issues with our network internally here on site. We don't seem to be able to open it up at the moment. Our internet has been pretty bad here on site today. What I will do is we have Michael, we have I have done web restores webinars before, and what I'll do is I'll include a link to that webinar for the web access of files in my email in a minute. Is that okay, Michael? Apologies now for the network coverage issues we're having. Okay, I mentioned I can send an email. Apologies, sorry. So I thought sometimes it comes up and sometimes it doesn't. So for everybody, this is my email. So did you all get that email? So that's just niallf@mozy.com. So that's N for November, I for India, A for Alpha, L for Lima, F for Frank @mozy.com. Okay, so I sent it there into the chat, so everybody should have got it. If you haven't gotten that, then when I send out the email, you can reply back to that. Okay, so so Samuel, I will be emailing yourself with the question about the backup sets. I'm emailing Pavel about his particular issue. Edward is going to attempt the steps that I gave to him from the article. If there's any issues, you can get back to me as well, Edward, and I can send that on further if we need to open up a support case for you. Tony, so yeah, you can send me on your steps for your issue. Michael, I'll send you on the webinar for the online access. And I go back through everybody else's ones in case I need to go back to anybody else. But other than that, thank you everybody. We've just run over a bit. Apologies for that. But thanks for attending today. Thanks for all the great questions. They're all really good. For those that I've answered, thank you. And for anybody else that I've said I'll get back to you, I'll get back to you immediately there now. Once we get off this session. Okay. So look out for next month's webinar. It'll be run again around the same time. I aim for the third Wednesday of every month, in or around. If there's a 5-week month, I tend to do it on the 4th week of the 4th Wednesday. So again, thank you very much for joining today. I'll be sending out the recording of today's session. I will be sending out the notes as well to today's session to everybody. And for those who I've said I'll get back to individually, I'll get back to them as well. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good day.